It's a pleasure to speak in this debate on the Shared Prosperity Fund and the devolved governments, and I want to pay tribute to the Honourable Lady for Belfast South for bringing it forward and for setting out her case so comprehensively. The Tory manifesto pledged a fair and equal share of funding which would fully replace EU support, which in Scotland would have been around £183 million per year. However, the Treasury Committee has already indicated in a report published at the end of January that the UK Shared Prosperity Fund up to 2024-25 will suffer a 40% reduction. In addition, all the power over delivery of funding is concentrated in Whitehall. There is no doubt that devolved governments have been ignored, and the Scottish Government as yet has no details of how much funding will be allocated to Scotland, nor has there been any consultation with Scottish ministers who have had no role in investment proposals or decisions in areas which are devolved to the Scottish Parliament. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund will be replacing the EU structural funds from next month, and still there has been no meaningful engagement with Scottish ministers or indeed other devolved nations. In January, the House of Lords Constitution Committee concluded that the UK Government continues to ignore devolution and the devolved government's calls for greater transparency on decisions being taken with regards to levelling up funding. With the Shared Prosperity Fund pre-launch guidance published this month, it is still completely unclear as to the role of devolved governments or parliaments with regard to that fund. The fact that the UK Government has chosen to work directly with local authorities is, as presented in this guidance, there is no evidence of respecting devolution or that the Scottish Government, for example, should be considered as an equal partner. And because the UK Government has also failed to offer any indication of Scotland's shared prosperity funding allocation, or indeed how levelling up will align with the priorities of the Scottish Government, there is no overarching strategic thinking or planning in accordance with the Scottish Government's priorities. It's simply not respectful that the UK Government to seek the Scottish Government's help in implementing projects after they have been selected by the UK Government. The Scottish Government, all devolved governments, should be consulted at all stages, as was the case with EU funding. What possible objection could there be to that unless the purpose is to undermine devolution? And whilst I appreciate the Minister will tell us of the great munificence of the UK Government, it's also important to remember that the Chancellor in the last budget announced several direct funding programmes in Scotland through the Levelling Up funding, totalling £172 million in spending. But the rolling out of the Levelling Up fund to communities around the UK short-changed the Scottish Government of expected Barnett consequentials, leaving a £400 million hole in the budget. Delays to the delivery of post-Brexit funding a year into Brexit have already robbed poorer areas of £1.5 billion in funding, with the Shared Prosperity Fund not set to deliver until April. And when it is delivered, it will fall far short of previous EU funding. The reality is that Scotland will receive 3.5% of all levelling up funding, despite having 8.2% of the UK's population. Perhaps the Minister can explain that. The reality is that the Secretary of State for Levelling Up and the Prime Minister led a Brexit campaign promising £1.5 billion a year for Scottish devolved services when the UK left the EU. Instead, all we have heard is an announcement for £172 million. And to put that into context, for every pound promised to Scotland, Scotland has received 11 pence. Scotland has been shortchanged, in effect, by 89% of what was promised. And I know the Minister will dispute this, but there is a growing consensus that the devolved governments have been shortchanged. The Treasury Committee says so, the House of Lords Constitution Committee says so, the Scottish Government says so, and the Unionist Welsh Government in Wales says so, all agreeing that this is the case. Scotland has been shortchanged. Her Parliament has been undermined. And I know the Minister thinks Scotland should be grateful, but the post-Brexit funding bonanza has not materialised, jeopardising important projects across Scotland and across the devolved nations. The post-Brexit funding bonanza hasn't materialised, And Scotland is the poorer for Brexit in so many ways. And I hope the Minister will today at least recognise the loss of funding Scotland and the other devolved nations have suffered as a result, and all the other concerns that he's heard about today in the Chamber. I really hope when he gets to his feet that he will make a genuine attempt to address those concerns.